The CEO who stayed single for 30 years never believed in love, until his male assistant became his one-exception gay love story. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It only takes a moment, it is completely free, and it is one of the best ways to support us as we continue bringing you more dramatic, heartfelt, and emotional stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. And before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I would love to know where everyone is joining us from. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the channel. Now, let us return to our main character and begin today's story. You know what scares me about love? Adrian Whitmore once said, people call it forever right before they change their minds. At 30, Adrian had built his entire life around never needing anyone enough to test that theory. Whitmore Technologies occupied 27 gleaming floors above downtown Chicago, and Adrian moved through them like the building had been designed around his footsteps. Employees straightened when he entered an elevator. Conversations became mysteriously productive when he passed. Meetings scheduled for an hour somehow ended in 28 minutes. Adrian wasn't cruel. Cruelty required unnecessary effort. He was simply precise. At 6:45 every morning, black coffee appeared beside his laptop. At 7 o'clock, financial reports. At 7:30, the first meeting. Dinner was usually whatever could be delivered to his office without interrupting work. His penthouse, 12 minutes away, contained expensive furniture, immaculate counters, and almost nothing that suggested a human being actually lived there. People occasionally asked why he was single. Adrian always gave the same answer. I'm busy. It sounded better than the truth. He had grown up watching his mother wait for a husband who had promised forever and then chosen somebody else. She kept believing he'd return long after Adrian stopped. By 16, Adrian had learned a lesson he carried into adulthood like armor. Never give another person enough power to ruin your peace. Then Lucas Hayes arrived on a rainy Monday morning carrying 2 coffees and absolutely no fear. Mr. Whitmore? Lucas asked from the doorway. Adrian glanced up. White, American, 27, brown hair still slightly damp from the rain. Navy tie imperfectly centered, expression calm. Your new executive assistant. Adrian looked at the second coffee. I didn't ask for that. It's mine. Adrian paused. Lucas took a sip. You looked offended by it. Something unfamiliar almost happened to Adrian's mouth. Almost. Sit. The interview lasted 11 minutes, although Lucas had technically already been hired. Adrian tested him on schedules, travel changes, conflicting priorities, and an impossible hypothetical involving 3 executives demanding the same afternoon. Lucas answered everything without performing nervous gymnastics. And if I change the schedule at the last minute? Adrian asked. Then I change it again. If I change it twice? Then I silently question your planning skills and change it twice. Adrian stared at him. Lucas blinked, silently being the important part. That almost smile threatened again. Adrian ignored it. You start today. Lucas stood. Technically, I started 17 minutes ago. He disappeared through the door before Adrian could respond. 3 weeks later, Adrian knew Lucas took his coffee with cream, called his younger sister every Wednesday, hated raisins, and hummed when concentrating. Adrian did not know why he knew these things. Worse, he noticed when Lucas wasn't nearby. One evening, Lucas appeared at Adrian's door wearing his coat. Everything urgent is handled. Good night, Mr. Whitmore. Adrian looked at the clock. 7:12 p.m. Then at Lucas. Then at the suddenly quiet office beyond him. You're leaving already? Lucas stopped. Adrian stopped breathing. Because for the first time in 30 years, being alone had sounded less like freedom and more like disappointment. Lucas stared at Adrian for half a second, and somehow that half second felt longer than most board meetings. It is after 7, he said. Carefully, Adrian glanced at the clock again, as though the numbers might have changed out of loyalty. I can see that. Good. I was worried 30 years of executive ambition had damaged your ability to tell time. Adrian should have been annoyed. Instead, that almost smile returned. Lucas noticed it. That was becoming a problem. Good night, Mr. Whitmore. Good night, Lucas. The door closed, and silence settled across the office with surprising weight. Adrian tried reading a quarterly report. 3 paragraphs later, he realized he had absorbed exactly nothing. He looked toward Lucas's empty desk and frowned at it as though the furniture had personally disappointed him. The following weeks made things worse. Lucas noticed everything. He noticed Adrian skipped breakfast whenever his first meeting started before 8. He noticed Adrian rubbed his left wrist when negotiations became difficult. He noticed that Adrian said he preferred silence but always left his office door open when Lucas worked late. None of this was discussed. Lucas simply began leaving a breakfast sandwich beside Adrian's coffee on early mornings. I did not order this, Adrian said the first time. Correct. Then why is it here? Because coffee is not breakfast. I have survived 30 years. Lucas looked at him thoughtfully. An inspiring medical mystery. Adrian ate the sandwich. Lucas never mentioned winning. That somehow made losing worse. One Thursday evening, Adrian emerged from a conference call shortly after 10 and found the outer office unusually dim. Lucas was asleep on the small couch near the windows. His laptop closed against his chest and his tie loosened after 14 hours of work. Adrian stopped. The city glittered beyond the glass, thousands of windows glowing across Chicago, but his attention remained on one exhausted assistant who had stayed because Adrian's schedule had collapsed into chaos. Adrian quietly took the laptop from Lucas's hands and placed it on the table. Lucas did not wake. Adrian found his own coat hanging nearby and hesitated before laying it over him. The gesture felt absurdly intimate despite being completely innocent. Adrian nearly took the coat back. Then Lucas shifted beneath it and relaxed. Something inside Adrian did the opposite. He returned to his office but left the door open. 20 minutes later, Lucas appeared there, sleepy and confused, holding Adrian's coat. Did you put this on me? Adrian kept his eyes on the screen. The temperature dropped. So you were protecting company property from hypothermia? Exactly. Lucas smiled softly. Thank you. No joke followed. No teasing. Just 2 quiet words. Adrian finally looked up. Lucas's expression contained no calculation, no expectation, no attempt to turn kindness into debt. Adrian had spent years believing every gesture came with an invisible invoice. Yet Lucas simply hung the coat carefully over the chair and left. That night, Adrian returned to his immaculate penthouse and stood alone in the silent kitchen. For reasons he could not explain, he found himself thinking about a breakfast sandwich, a sleepy smile, and the strange possibility that being cared for did not always mean owing someone something. The storm arrived just after 6 on Friday evening, turning the Chicago skyline into a gray blur behind the office windows. Rain swept across the glass while weather alerts appeared on phones throughout the building. By 7, most employees had gone home. By 8, public transit delays were spreading across the city. Several roads were flooded, and Lucas stood beside Adrian's desk with his phone in one hand and a deeply unimpressed expression on his face. Congratulations, Lucas said. We live here now. Adrian looked up from the acquisition proposal he had been reviewing. That seems dramatic. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the windows. Lucas glanced toward the dark sky. The universe supports my argument. They still had work to finish before Monday, so neither attempted the miserable trip home. For another hour, they remained professionally separated by spreadsheets, emails, and the comfortable fiction that nothing between them had changed. Then Lucas appeared carrying 2 bags of pretzels, crackers, and something from the vending machine that claimed to be a turkey sandwich. Adrian stared at the collection. That looks dangerous. You are welcome to survive on confidence. Lucas dropped into the chair opposite him. Adrian looked at the sandwich again. Give me half. Lucas smiled. There is hope for you. They moved to the employee lounge, where the emergency lights cast a softer glow than Adrian's office. Without assistants calling, executives interrupting, or phones constantly ringing, the building felt different. So did Lucas. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled neatly to his elbows, and he was laughing about an embarrassing college job involving a coffee shop and a broken espresso machine. Adrian found himself listening instead of calculating how long the conversation was taking. "What about you?" Lucas asked. "What about me?" "Something completely useless." Adrian frowned. "Define useless." Lucas laughed. "That answer is exactly the problem." Adrian leaned back. "I have hobbies." "Name one." Silence. "Reading." "Business books do not count." Another silence. Lucas studied him with growing amusement. "This is worse than I thought." Adrian shook his head, but this time the smile escaped before he could stop it. Lucas saw it and went strangely quiet. The moment changed. Not dramatically. Nothing happened. Yet Adrian suddenly became aware of the rain against the windows, the empty room, and how easily Lucas occupied a space Adrian had spent years keeping empty. "When was the last time you did something because you wanted to?" Lucas asked softly. "Not because it was productive. Not because somebody expected it. Just because it made you happy." Adrian opened his mouth. No answer came. Lucas did not push. That kindness somehow made the question harder. Near midnight, they returned to Adrian's office. Lucas eventually fell asleep on the couch, one hand tucked beneath his cheek. Adrian continued working until he realized he had reread the same sentence 4 times. He looked over. Lucas was still asleep. Adrian found a folded blanket in the cabinet and carefully placed it over him. He stood there for a moment, watching Lucas settle comfortably beneath it. Then Adrian returned to his desk. At 1 a.m, he finally understood what had been bothering him for weeks. Lucas had not made Adrian afraid of being alone. He had done something far more dangerous. He had shown Adrian how different life could feel when he was not. Monday morning should have returned everything to normal. Adrian had expected schedules, reports, meetings, and the familiar comfort of routine to erase whatever the storm had changed. Instead, Lucas walked into his office at 7:03 carrying coffee, and Adrian immediately noticed he had switched to a blue tie. This was ridiculous. Adrian Whitmore managed hundreds of employees and multimillion-dollar negotiations. He should not have known which tie his assistant wore on Thursday. "Your 9 o'clock moved to 10, Lucas said. "The Denver call is confirmed for 11:30, and I ordered breakfast because apparently you still require supervision." Adrian accepted the paper bag without arguing. Lucas paused. "No complaint. I am choosing efficiency. You are choosing a breakfast sandwich. Leave before I reconsider." Lucas grinned and disappeared. Adrian stared at the doorway for 2 seconds too long. Things became progressively more inconvenient after that. Adrian remembered Lucas preferred cinnamon in his coffee on cold mornings. He stopped scheduling late Friday meetings because Lucas had once mentioned dinner with his younger sister. When Lucas replaced a dying plant near the reception desk, Adrian somehow remembered to ask 3 days later whether it had survived. None of these actions felt significant individually. Together, they formed a pattern Adrian refused to name. Then, on a Wednesday morning 6 weeks after Lucas had started, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Lucas arrived pale, unusually quiet, and 10 minutes late. Adrian noticed immediately. "You are sick." Lucas placed a folder on the desk. "Good morning to you too. Go home. I have 3 meetings to coordinate. Someone else can coordinate them." Lucas blinked. "Did you just acknowledge that another employee is capable of doing my job?" Adrian stood. "Lucas, that sounded almost concerned. You have a fever. You cannot know that by looking at me." 20 minutes later, Adrian was driving him home. Lucas lived in a modest apartment in Lincoln Park, less than 4 miles from the office but a world away from Adrian's polished penthouse. There were family photographs on the shelves, second-hand novels stacked beside the couch, mismatched coffee mugs, and a stubborn collection of green plants occupying every available window. Adrian looked around as Lucas dropped his keys into a ceramic bowl. "You can stop inspecting the place." "I am not inspecting. You stared at my lamp for 12 seconds. It is crooked. It has character. It has structural concerns. Lucas laughed, then immediately looked exhausted. Adrian's amusement vanished. He made tea, found cold medicine in the kitchen cabinet, and ordered soup from a nearby deli. Lucas watched from the couch with sleepy disbelief. You know you can leave. Adrian adjusted the blanket over him. I know. Then why are you still here? Adrian had no useful answer. Lucas fell asleep before Adrian found one. An hour passed. Adrian sat nearby answering emails quietly, surrounded by photographs of people who clearly loved one another without embarrassment. When he finally stood to leave, Lucas shifted and caught his wrist without opening his eyes. Stay, he murmured. One word, barely awake. Adrian looked at Lucas's hand around his wrist. Every instinct built over 30 years told him to step away before kindness became attachment, before attachment became need. He could have left. Instead, Adrian sat back down. Lucas relaxed almost immediately, still holding him. Adrian remained there as afternoon light softened across the apartment, realizing with terrifying clarity that Lucas was no longer simply someone he enjoyed having around. He had become someone Adrian was beginning to choose. Lucas returned to work 2 days later looking healthier, carrying his usual coffee and wearing the expression of a man who had already decided to pretend nothing unusual had happened. Adrian was grateful for exactly 7 minutes. Then Lucas placed the morning schedule on his desk and said, "Thank you for staying." Adrian kept his eyes on the document. "You were sick. I noticed. Leaving you alone would have been irresponsible." Lucas leaned against the edge of the desk. "You stayed for almost 5 hours. You were very sick." "I had a mild fever, Adrian." Adrian looked up at the sound of his first name. Lucas rarely used it at work. Somehow, 2 syllables crossed the space between them more effectively than anything else could have. "You also held my hand," Lucas added. "You held my wrist. While unconscious. That sounds like your problem." Lucas laughed, and Adrian hated how much he liked being responsible for that sound. Over the next week, the careful distance between them became thinner. Nothing inappropriate happened. Nothing needed to. A shared look during an unnecessarily long meeting became enough. Lucas left coffee beside Adrian without asking. Adrian started appearing near Lucas's desk with questions he could easily have sent by email. On Friday evening, they were alone again when Lucas finally looked up from his computer. "Can I ask you something?" "You usually do regardless. Why are you only kind to me when nobody is watching?" Adrian went still. Lucas closed his laptop. "At the office, when people are around, you become Mr. Whitmore again. But during the storm, or at my apartment, you are different. I am your employer. I know. There should be boundaries." Lucas nodded slowly. "Then why do those boundaries disappear whenever we are alone?" Silence filled the office. Adrian stood behind his desk, suddenly unable to hide inside schedules or quarterly projections. Lucas rose too. There were several feet between them, but Adrian felt every inch. "Lucas, you do not have to explain anything you do not feel." That was the problem. Adrian felt too much. Lucas stepped closer, stopping well before the distance became uncomfortable. "I just need to know whether I imagined it." Adrian looked at him. The answer was there, painfully simple, waiting to be spoken. "No, you did not imagine it." Instead, an old memory surfaced. His mother sitting at a kitchen table beside a silent telephone, defending promises made by someone who had already left. Adrian remembered deciding that love turned intelligent people into strangers to themselves. His chest tightened. He stepped back. Lucas understood. Immediately, the disappointment on his face was quiet, which made it worse. "I see," Lucas said. "This conversation is over." "All right." The next Monday, Adrian communicated through email. Tuesday, he reassigned 2 meetings Lucas normally attended. Wednesday, he asked another executive assistant to handle his travel arrangements. He called it professionalism. Lucas called it nothing. He simply stopped bringing breakfast, stopped teasing him, stopped saying Adrian, and returned to Mr. Whitmore. By Friday, The office was perfectly efficient again. Adrian had gotten exactly what he wanted. Distance, control, safety. Then he walked past Lucas's desk and noticed a document open on his computer screen. Lucas minimized it immediately, but not before Adrian saw enough. It was a resignation letter. Adrian continued into his office, closed the door, and stood completely still. He had spent 30 years making sure nobody could leave him. Somehow, he had never considered what would happen when his defenses became the reason someone wanted to. The resignation letter arrived at 8:06 Monday morning, printed on plain white paper and placed carefully in the center of Adrian's desk. Lucas did not dramatize it. He did not accuse him. Somehow, that made the single page feel heavier. 2 weeks, Lucas said. Adrian stared at the signature at the bottom. You are resigning. That is generally what a resignation letter means. Normally, Adrian might have appreciated the sarcasm. Today, it landed somewhere painful. Why? Lucas looked at him for a long moment. You know why. Adrian stood. If this is about last week, I can correct the reporting structure. You can work under another executive. This is not about reporting structure. Then compensation. Human resources can review your salary. Lucas exhaled softly. You are doing it again. Doing what? Trying to solve a human problem like it belongs in a spreadsheet. Adrian fell silent. Lucas stepped closer to the desk, but his voice remained calm. You were kind to me. You let me see someone nobody else seems to know. Then the second that became real, you shut the door and acted like I had done something wrong. You did. Nothing wrong. Then why did you punish me for noticing you cared? Adrian looked away. I was trying to protect the situation. No, you were trying to protect yourself. The words were quiet, accurate. Adrian hated accurate things when they were aimed at him. Lucas, I never intended to hurt you. Intent does not erase impact. Lucas swallowed, then continued. And you do not get to push me away and call it protection. Adrian had negotiated acquisitions worth hundreds of millions of dollars without losing his composure. Now one man standing across from him made every prepared answer disappear. I do not want you to leave. Lucas's expression softened, but only slightly. Why? There it was. The question Adrian had avoided his entire life. He could say Lucas was excellent at his job. Reliable, intelligent, necessary. All true. None sufficient. Because this company needs you. Lucas gave a sad little smile. That is what I thought. He turned toward the door. Lucas. He stopped. Adrian wanted to say something brave. Instead, fear arrived first. I will have human resources process everything. Lucas nodded once. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. The door closed. Adrian remained standing. Mr. Whitmore. 2 words had never sounded so distant. The rest of the day continued with insulting normalcy. Meetings happened. Emails arrived. Numbers moved across screens. Adrian answered questions automatically while noticing every absence Lucas had created. No breakfast beside his coffee. No quiet humming outside his office. No sarcastic reminder that 6 consecutive meetings were not a personality. That evening, Adrian returned to his penthouse and discovered silence waiting exactly where he had left it. For years, he had called this peace. Now it felt different. He sat at the kitchen island and remembered his mother waiting for someone who chose to leave. Adrian had built his entire life around never becoming her. Yet the truth was suddenly obvious. He had been so afraid of abandonment that he had learned to abandon people first. His father had walked away physically. Adrian walked away emotionally. Different method. Same empty room. The realization did not excuse him. Demanded something harder than regret. Change. Adrian opened his laptop. Lucas's resignation letter was already processed in the system, waiting for final approval. His hand hovered over the option that could delay it. He could create reasons for Lucas to stay. More money. Promotion. A better title. Adrian closed the laptop instead. If Lucas stayed because Adrian controlled his career, that would not be love. It would only be power wearing a kinder face. For the first time, Adrian understood that caring about someone did not mean finding a way to keep them. Sometimes it meant respecting their freedom to leave, even when every selfish part of you wanted them to stay. For the first time in Adrian Whitmore's career, doing the right thing felt exactly like losing. The next morning, he approved Lucas's resignation without delay. No counteroffer. No executive maneuvering. No convenient restructuring designed to make leaving difficult. Then Adrian spent nearly an hour writing a recommendation letter, deleted it because it sounded like a performance review, and started again. The second version described Lucas as intelligent, dependable, compassionate, and unusually gifted at making complicated environments feel human. Adrian stared at the final sentence before signing his name. Any organization fortunate enough to have Lucas Hayes will become better because he is there. He sent it to Lucas without explanation. 5 minutes later, Lucas appeared in the doorway. "You approved everything." Adrian looked up. "Yes, and you sent me a recommendation. You deserve one." Lucas seemed almost suspicious. "You are not going to offer me more money? No, a promotion? No, a mysterious executive position created this morning?" Adrian leaned back. "I considered it." Lucas almost smiled. "Of course you did. Then I realized that would be about what I want." The humor faded from Lucas's face. Adrian continued carefully. "You made a decision about your life. I should respect it." Lucas studied him as though searching for the hidden negotiation. There was none. "Thank you," he finally said. "You are welcome." Lucas turned to leave. "Lucas." He looked back. Adrian's instinct was to ask him to stay. Instead, he said, "I am sorry." Lucas went still. Adrian had apologized in business before, usually in carefully engineered language that admitted inconvenience without admitting vulnerability. This was different. "I treated distance like kindness because it was easier than admitting I was afraid," Adrian said. "You did not deserve that." Lucas's expression softened. "What were you afraid of?" Adrian looked toward the windows. Chicago moved below them, busy and indifferent. "My father left when I was young. My mother spent years believing he would come back. I decided love was the thing that made her wait." Lucas said nothing. Adrian appreciated that. "I thought if I never needed anyone, nobody could take anything important when they left." "Did it work?" Lucas asked. Adrian gave a quiet laugh. "Until you." The words settled between them. Lucas did not rush forward. Adrian did not ask him to. That mattered. "I am still leaving," Lucas said gently. "I know. I need to know that my career belongs to me." "It does." Lucas nodded. "Then maybe you are finally learning something." After he left, Adrian called his mother. They had spoken regularly for years, but never about his father. This time Adrian asked a question he should have asked long ago. "Do you regret loving him?" There was silence before she answered. "I regret forgetting myself while I loved him." "That is not the same thing." Adrian closed his eyes. Suddenly, 30 years of certainty shifted. His father's failure had not proven that love was foolish. His mother's pain had not come from caring too deeply. It had come from believing love required her to disappear inside someone else's choices. Adrian finally understood the difference. Love was not possession. It was not dependence disguised as devotion. It was not keeping someone because you had the power to make staying easier than leaving. 2 weeks passed quickly. On Lucas's final Friday, Adrian watched him pack the small objects from his desk. A coffee mug, 2 pens, a photograph of his sister, and the tiny plant he had somehow kept alive. Adrian wanted to stop the clock. He did not. At 5:30, Lucas carried the box toward the elevator. Adrian remained inside his office until the doors closed. Then he looked at the empty desk and understood one final thing. Respecting Lucas's freedom to leave did not require Adrian to hide what he felt. For 30 years, fear had made every important decision for him. Adrian grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. This time, fear could come with him. It just was not going to lead. Adrian reached the lobby just as Lucas stepped through the revolving doors into the cool Chicago evening. For one terrible second, Adrian considered stopping. He was a chief executive officer. He had delivered speeches to packed auditoriums, negotiated across tables where a single sentence could move millions of dollars, and once answered questions from 6 reporters without changing his expression. Yet asking one man to dinner suddenly felt like the most difficult conversation of his life. Lucas. Lucas stopped on the sidewalk and turned, still holding the small box from his desk. His surprise was immediate. Adrian. Adrian walked toward him, then deliberately stopped several feet away. No office. No desk between them. No title to hide behind. I need to tell you something. Lucas glanced at the building behind Adrian. Am I about to discover that I forgot another company laptop? No, good. I was emotionally prepared to never see that security department again. Adrian laughed, and some of the tension loosened. Lucas smiled too, but waited. I almost asked you to stay, Adrian said. I know. I almost offered you enough money to make leaving unreasonable. Also no. That is slightly insulting. You are predictable when terrified. Adrian looked down for a moment. Apparently, a taxi passed through the intersection. Somewhere nearby, a restaurant door opened, releasing warmth and conversation onto the sidewalk. Adrian lifted his eyes again. But I finally understood that if I used my position to keep you close, I would be choosing control over you. I do not want to do that. Lucas's expression softened. So why did you follow me? Adrian took a slow breath. Because respecting your decision does not mean pretending I do not care. Lucas said nothing. Adrian had nowhere left to hide. You asked me once why I was different when nobody was watching. The answer is that being around you made me want to be different. Kinder. Less certain that everything meaningful eventually becomes a liability. His voice grew quieter. And that frightened me because I did not know how to care about someone without immediately preparing for the day they might leave. Lucas set the box carefully on a nearby bench. Adrian, are you here as my former boss? No. Then who are you here as? Adrian almost smiled. A 30-year-old idiot who spent his entire life believing that needing another person made him weak. Lucas folded his arms. That is surprisingly self-aware. I have had a difficult 2 weeks. Tragic. Lucas. Sorry. Continue. Adrian shook his head, smiling now despite himself. Then the smile faded into something more vulnerable. I am not asking you to come back to Whitmore Technologies. I am not asking you to change your career. I am not even asking you to trust that I have figured everything out, because I have not. He paused. I am asking whether you would let me take you to dinner. Lucas watched him carefully. A business dinner? No business. Networking? No. A performance evaluation? Adrian stared at him. Lucas finally laughed. I needed to hear you say it. Adrian stepped closer, still leaving Lucas room to choose the distance between them. My first real date, he said. Lucas's teasing disappeared. You are serious. Unfortunately. Why unfortunately? Because I have no idea what I am doing. Lucas smiled, warm and unguarded. Good. Good. For once, neither do I. Then Lucas reached out his hand. Adrian looked at it before taking it gently. Such a small gesture. No contract. No promise of forever. No guarantee against disappointment. Just a choice freely offered and freely accepted. Adrian had spent 30 years demanding certainty before allowing himself to care. Standing there with Lucas beneath the city lights, he finally understood that love offered something better than certainty. It offered the chance to choose someone without owning them, and the courage to let them choose you back. 3 months later, Adrian's penthouse no longer looked like a luxury apartment staged for someone who never arrived. There were still clean counters, expensive furniture, and windows overlooking Chicago. But now there was also a pair of Lucas's sneakers beside the door, a blue coffee mug in the sink, and a stubborn green plant sitting proudly near the living room window. Adrian had been given very specific instructions regarding the plant. Water it once a week, Lucas had said. That is all. Adrian had frowned. How much water? Enough. That is not a measurement. Adrian, it is a plant, not a quarterly forecast. Somehow, the plant survived. So did they. Lucas had accepted a position at a non-profit consulting firm downtown, where he managed operations and spent his days helping community organizations improve their programs. Adrian had offered advice exactly once. Lucas had looked at him over dinner and said, "Are you trying to manage my career?" Adrian had immediately returned to his pasta. Progress did not always look heroic. Sometimes it looked like knowing when to stop talking. Their relationship developed slowly. Friday dinners became Sunday walks along Lake Michigan. Sunday walks became ordinary Tuesday evenings spent arguing about which movie to watch. Adrian discovered Lucas talked during films. Lucas discovered Adrian organized his refrigerator by category. Neither considered these discoveries grounds for separation. More importantly, Adrian changed at work too. Meetings became shorter for a different reason now. He started asking employees what they needed instead of assuming he already knew. He stopped treating exhaustion as evidence of commitment. One evening, an employee apologized for leaving early to attend his daughter's school concert. Adrian stared at him. "Why are you apologizing?" The man seemed confused. Adrian was slightly confused too. 6 months earlier, he might have been the reason for that apology. Now he simply said, "Go. Your daughter will remember whether you were there." That night, Lucas came over carrying takeout and found Adrian standing beside the surviving plant. "You look proud of yourself," Lucas said. "It has grown. Half an inch. Should I alert the media?" "I kept something alive." Lucas set the food down. "Your company employs hundreds of people. They water themselves." Lucas laughed so hard he had to lean against the counter. Adrian watched him, and the familiar warmth arrived again. It no longer frightened him the way it once had. Lucas eventually noticed the stare. "What?" "Nothing." "That was definitely something." Adrian walked closer. "I was thinking. Dangerous hobby. 30 years without falling in love." Lucas smiled. "That is an impressive streak." Adrian reached for his hand. Months ago, even this simple gesture had felt like stepping into uncertainty. Now it felt like coming home. "I used to think I was protecting myself," Adrian said. "From love. From losing it." Lucas's expression softened. Adrian looked down at their joined hands. "I thought the only way to guarantee nobody could leave was to never let anyone matter enough. And now I know there are no guarantees." Lucas squeezed his hand gently. "That sounds terrifying for you." "Completely." Lucas laughed. "But," Adrian looked at him, "but I would rather have something real without guarantees than spend another 30 years perfectly safe and completely alone." The apartment grew quiet, but it was not the old silence. This silence contained 2 coffee mugs, terrible movie debates, a living plant, and someone who could leave whenever he wanted but kept choosing to return. Lucas smiled. "So I was your exception?" Adrian shook his head. "No." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "I was not waiting 30 years for an exception." Adrian's fingers tightened gently around his. "I was waiting 30 years for you." Outside, Chicago glittered beneath the evening sky. Inside, Adrian finally understood what his mother had tried to teach him without words. Love was not proven by holding someone so tightly they could never leave. It was proven by giving them the freedom to go, becoming someone worthy of staying for, and waking up grateful every time they chose you again.